Okay, so you can see my screen, right? All of you can see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so today let me discuss that the the damaging effect of light, particularly that is the health effect. Now, this is something that all of us know that this solar radiation it sometimes acts what in biological language it is called this genotoxic. So genotoxic in the sense that it can affect our this genome and also that it's a in a smaller scale. What you can say that it is basically this that is how to explain that this the genotoxic effect. Uh, the origin it is called this the light what it causes is this mutagenicity. So when it just if you try to analyze these things, the origin of all these things affect manifestations are basically that this molecular level change that happens at this of your nucleic acids. So what I shall do today that to give you some of these basics that usually happens that when we are exposed to solar radiation. Okay, so that is the purpose of today's class. Now, let us start from here. That is, if you analyze this region of the spectrum that I have shown here, uh, so what is shown, you can see here on my screen that it is the irradiance, solar irradiance in a uh, clear sky in this wavelength range of 250 to 400 nanometer. Okay, so 250 to 400 nanometer, this is basically the ultraviolet range of the spectrum. Now, this ultraviolet range of the spectrum, what you can see here, and this irradiance intensity is shown. Now, this ultraviolet radiation that is emitted by the sun and which is reached on this lower region of our atmosphere, that is troposphere, is usually divided into three parts. This part you already know. That is UVA. So UVA region is actually shaded here with this the blue region. You can see there that there is a small some oscillations here. This is mostly because of the absorption of light by the atmospheric molecules. And then what you can see that this below 300 nanometer, that is UVA. UVA means that UVA is this is what? This is denoted by this UVA, this vertical dotted line. So UVA means nearly about 320 nanometer. So 400 to 320 nanometer approximately, this is called this UVA. And 320 to nearly 275 nanometer, this is usually called this UVB light. And below 275 nanometer, it is called this UVC. Now, this classification UVA, UVB, and UVC, this is purely that the classification is based on the chemical effect of the light. Normally, if you see that what kind of the molecule consists in our cell or the cell membrane, then basically they are the proteins and the lipids and your nucleic acids. Okay. Now, all these molecules, proteins, nucleic acids, as well as your lipids, they absorb ultraviolet light more or less in all these regions of the spectrum. Okay. The absorption in UVA region is relatively small. UVC region, that is in this region, this absorption is maximum. But in the UVB region, actually that you have what is shown here, that is this the overlap of this region, that is some of this red region and some of this blue region, this region, the damaging effect is actually maximum. Damaging effect maximum means that this part of the radiation that is available on the solar surfaces. Okay. Let me repeat on these things. What I tried to tell you that this ultraviolet light within the wavelength range of 250 to 400 nanometer is divided into three categories: UVA, UVB, and UVC. UVA means 400 to about 320 nanometer, 320 to about 300. It is called usually 260, but suppose it is say that this 260 to 275 nanometer. So this is actually your UVB range, and below that you have this UVC range. And what this picture shows you, that this irradiance, that is available intensity of the light at the lower part of our atmosphere. Okay, so it means that below 300 nanometer, this intensity of the light is very small. So mostly what you can see here, that is available in the lower part of this atmosphere, the whole region of this UVA and part of the UVB region, that is longer wavelength region of the UVB and shorter wavelength region, and so on. And of course, that this what is the content of this ultraviolet light in the solar radiation, that depends on two factors. One is this your latitude, and another is the time of the day. So this is one the data that actually again I am showing you. It's a different unit that has been used, solar UV dose, that is kilojoule per meter square. For this UVB and this UVA, this region, and you see that how it depends on the timing of the day. So if it is early in the morning, like in this region when you are, so naturally this intensity of the light is small. That is actually shown here, this kilojoule per, the energy kilojoule per meter square. So intensity of the light is small. And at the middle of the day, you can see here that this intensity is ultraviolet light, that is maximum. So whether it is ultra, so UVA naturally, so UVA is actually your maximum energy that you get here. But UVB, so UVB means that this wavelength that you can see below 320 nanometer, so that energy is less. And then again, if you go to this evening, so naturally that with the overall solar, the intensity is decreased. And at the same time also this UV radiation, that is also decreased. So it means that whatever the damaging effect that occurs is mostly, that is if you are exposed in the some of the middle of the day. Okay. So this is the case of the solar radiation and this ultraviolet intensity distribution. Now let me show you that what are the different molecules. So you know that if you take a protein molecule, then naturally the side chains of these protein molecules, particularly these aromatic residues that is present, that is tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine residues, those are mostly responsible for the absorption of your solar radiation. And but the damaging effect so far that has been understood is that it is mostly because of the damaging effect that occurs on the nucleic acids. Okay, so let me show you that.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the previous graph, that right hand side, the graph, what is the red and the blue part? Like blue part is the irradiance of UVA.
Okay, so actually, so this is this red part. If you try to see the first, let us see this way, that what is this intensity, this overall intensity that has been observed here. So this intensity is actually solar radiation intensity. Okay. Now, how you can get these things, particularly that this all these exploratory missions, that is, if you go to this above the troposphere, that is nearly about 100 kilometer above the Earth's surface level, and there, if you measure this intensity of the light, okay, that is, it means that you will have to go this above this ozone layer. Typically, the ozone layer, the maximum intensity thickness is about 25 to 30 kilometers above the Earth's surface. But if you go to about 100 kilometers above the Earth's surface, unfortunately, I did not bring here this your curve that how it depends on this altitude, this intensity. But what is shown here is that if you go this beyond this whole our this atmospheric region, that is about 80 to 100 kilometers above the Earth's surface, and if you measure this, what is the intensity of the solar radiation there? So this is the curve, the complete curve. Okay, this complete curve here that you can see. Now, in a shiny day, if you try to measure this, what is the intensity of the solar radiation on the Earth's surface, then actually that is the blue curve, this region. Okay, so on the Earth surface, so this region is actually not available. So that's why it has been painted here. It is the red.
So blue is for normal, the sea level, and the red is for high altitudes, right?
Red means this whole region. The whole region is actually when you go to this high altitude. So this red, by this, that it wanted to indicate that this part of the solar radiation, which is actually emitted by the sun, is not available on the troposphere.
Okay, sir.
Huh? Did you get? Okay. Then actually, what I wanted to tell you here using this figure, that suppose that this part is available, this part of this UVB, part of the UVB, that is, you can see here this region. So part of the blue and part of this red, this region, and this, if you see that this UVA, if you try to measure that what is the intensity distribution as if with time of the day, then this is the one of the measurement that was done. You can see here that I took it from one of this paper, illustrative example of an environmental measurement of the solar UVB. Solar UVB means approximately 280 to 350 nanometer, and UVA, that is 315 to 400 nanometer region. It's the integrated intensity incidence in the clear sky summer day 2015 at the this latitude of 29 degree 4 minutes in the South Brazil. Okay, using this continuous UVB UVA broadband radiometer, using this kind of this equipment which was built by this company. Tiny. So even if you do this measurement, suppose we also live in this tropical region, in any of the summer day when the sky is clear, if you measure, then definitely these values will change, that the solar UV radiation dose, these values will change, but approximate distribution of this curve, it remains unchanged. Okay? It's almost everywhere it is the same. But if you go to this polar region, usually these intensity distributions are different. Because particularly in these days, that when there is, we talk about this ozone hole and this the whole the size that depends, of course, the particular season. So in the polar region, these intensity distributions are different, but this is a typical intensity distribution in the tropical region. So that's why this Brazil data that I took it here as is available.
And can you just repeat that part once again? Which part, like among UVA and UVB and UVC, which is absorbed the most? And that's
Tell me once again. Okay. So I'm coming actually.
absorption part.
Okay, yeah, absorption part I am coming. So this is what I am. I have given here is again it's basically cartoon type of diagram, not exact the intensity distribution. So if you look at my screen here, again it is a basically absorption spectrum that is presented. The absorbance, which with you are familiar. So absorbance is plotted against the wavelength of the light, and the particular molecule that has been chosen here is actually one DNA molecule. Okay, so DNA molecule, what you can see here, it is basically this shaded region. It is the typical absorption spectrum of a DNA molecule. Now again, I have shown here this UV, UVA, UVB, and UVC, this wavelength distribution region. Now you can see here that the DNA molecule, it mostly absorbs. I also told you the same thing in the last class. That is, if you look at this absorption spectrum of the isolated DNA base molecule, isolated DNA base, that is which is not in the form of your nucleotide form, just isolated DNA base, usually that has the absorption maximum about 260 nanometer in this region. It has the absorption maximum. But once you prepare as DNA, it means that these multiple chemical substitutions are taking place. And also the molecule is in a different environment, that where this one base molecule interacts with the surrounding. So what happens that has an effect on the absorption spectrum. But this is the typical absorption spectrum of a DNA molecule. So if you see here that this maximum is again in the same region, it has retained like 260. But it is not a sharp absorption, it is actually very broad absorption. So absorption tail is there in this UVB region. So UVB region, if you can remember this previous figure here, that the solar radiation below 300 nanometer is almost not available on the lower region of this Earth surface. So it means that if you go to the seaside, that mostly you will be exposed to UV light about 290 nanometers. So 290 nanometer means that in this is the region about 200. This is 280. This is 320. So 290 nanometer means that somewhat this region. So you will be exposed mostly to light of this. Like I suppose if I just again draw here this absorption, the solar irradiance that is available on the Earth's surface. So this region of this light mostly will be exposed to. Okay, so it means that this is the overall absorption spectrum of the DNA molecule. So DNA molecule, and then this part of the light, this part only you are just basically making an exposure to the to these molecules. That is particularly our biological systems. So it means that this DNA molecule absorbs ultraviolet light. This absorption that happens because this is, you have plotted here only this absorbance. So this region, this absorbance is maximum. But if you look at this region, actually, it is not this absorption is zero. It is also very small absorptions are also there. Now, if you look at this total intensity distribution again here, total intensity distribution, this UVA region, the UVA region, this intensity. If you look at this UVA region, this intensity, this is UVA, and this UVB region, this intensity, this integrated intensity of the UVA region is much larger. That is available on the Earth's surface compared to this integrated intensity of the UVB region that is available on the Earth's surface. Okay, so although absorbance here is relatively larger, but this overall integrated intensity of the UVA, where this absorption of your DNA molecules are small, they are actually large. So two factors are actually working here. One is that this UVB, here this absorbance is large, but this integrated intensity is small. In UVA, absorbance is small, but this integrated intensity of the available light is large. So it means that it has been estimated this overall effect are not very different. Of course, this UVB, it has much more damaging effect. Why the damaging effect, how it is originates, I'm just shortly going to explain to you. But this UVA, the damaging effect is not also very negligible. It is also significant, and the significance originates because because the damaging effects originates only because of this absorption of light. If the molecule does not absorb light, if it reflects light, then of course this damaging effect does not originate. So if you are well clothed so the sunscreen I talked about this other day, one of the sunscreen works in a different method. We will discuss these things later. That most of the sunscreens, they act as reflectors. Okay. So it reflects most of the light, ultraviolet light. So the penetration of this ultraviolet light to our cellular level is becoming small if you use the sunscreen as a protection. But if you do not use that, then this light absorption definitely can take place mostly by these DNA molecules. Now, why this DNA that is mostly talked about? The reason is that the DNA bases, and if you look at the side chains, aromatic residues of your proteins, these aromatic residues, the damaging effect means after light absorption, to what extent chemical change occurs. So this chemical sensitivity of the DNA bases is much larger compared to your chemical sensitivity following light absorption by your aromatic side chain residues of your proteins. So that's why that any kind of effect that particularly when you talk about this skin cancer, because of this prolonged exposure of the solar radiation, it is called this mutagenic effect. Mutagenic effect in the sense that it causes the mutation of our genetic system, and these genetic systems definitely consist of these nucleic acids and bases. That part I already know. Okay, so that's why that this photo damaging effect on health, when these things are discussed in the biology, mostly what is talked about is the effect on the nucleic acid system. Okay, is it okay up to this much? What I tried to say? Okay, then let me go that what kind of chemical reaction can take place. But before that, let me tell you that we know that basically our the nucleic acids is contains this purine and pyrimidine bases. But the chemical reactions, photochemical reactions, when it is performed in the laboratory, it has been observed that these purine bases are actually less sensitive to damaging effect of light compared to the pyridine bases. Now, taking with the discrete the nucleotides as well as your nucleic acids, the common understanding that people have come to is that this most of the damaging effect is because of the uh, thymine and these uracils. Okay, so adenine, guanine, their effect is very small, but this thymine, cytosine, and these uracils, on those molecules, the damaging effect is the large. Now, what kind of damaging effect happens? That this chemically, basically, what happens is a kind of dimerization, a chemical reaction. Okay. So, having said this, let me just take you to some of these basics that how a chemical reaction occurs. Now, take a model molecule like this. If you took a look at this thymine, again, just look at this structure. A thymine molecule contains here, basically, it is a six-member ring that you can see here. It's a six-member ring. You have a carbonyl group. This is also a carbonyl group. And then you have a carbon-carbon double bond. This carbon-carbon double bond, it is not an isolated carbon-carbon double bond, but it is basically conjugated through this nitrogen atom that contains a lone pair electron, and also you have a carbonyl group here. Okay. Now, this carbon-carbon double bond, this is basically sensitive to light absorption followed by photochemical reaction. Now, let us look at this very prototypical chemical system that which contains a carbon-carbon double bond. And if you shine ultraviolet light, and when that prototypical chemical system absorb light, then what kind of chemical change typically occurs? So let me explain these things to you. It is in general in chemical literature, this reaction is called this 2+2 cycloaddition reaction. Now, what is this 2+2 cycloaddition reaction? Look at this here. What is taken here is basically your not cyclohexane but cyclohexene. So it means it's a carbon oxygen double bond in a ring system, and that is basically at this your alpha position, you have a carbon-carbon double bond system. Okay, it's a carbon-carbon double bond. So with this, if you mix with another molecule here, another molecule means it's a basically ethylene molecule, but with a substitution group. This substitution group could be different type. It could be electron withdrawing type of substitution group, as you usually study in chemistry class. That is, if it could have a cyano group, or it could have a electron rich group like R group could be your cyano group, or in other cases, that suppose you have an R prime, it is basically OCH3 methoxy group. So this is called your electron withdrawing group when R equal to cyanide or nitrile group, and R prime equal to OCH3. That is, if it is a methoxy group, you say that this is actually electron donating group. So depending upon electron rich group or electron donating group, and depending upon that what kind of different substitutions are present there, the propensity of the reactions become different. But the basic reactions that take place is that basically it's an addition reaction. It means that you have a double bond here, there is a double bond here. So these two double bonds, they fused and produce, it's a cyclobutane ring. This is a common reaction that happens in chemistry. So this kind of reactions, it is called a photochemical reactions. Now, how these chemical reactions occur? So for that, let us look at this, how the basic chemical bonding it is there. That is, we know that when a pi bond is produced, then basically these atoms offer one electron, pi electron, and it is offer electron. So you say that these two atomic orbitals. So what kind of orbitals? You say that these are the p type of orbitals. So p type of orbitals, because of their combination, they produce one this p type of orbital. P to p orbitals, the way you just give the sign of these orbitals, because by this time maybe that you have learned that what is the meaning of this sign. One side is plus, another side is minus. Now when a pi bond is produced, then basically these two p orbital can have two different kind of linear combination of orientation. One is that this plus and plus they can combine, and you say that this plus plus combination you produce, it's a bonding orbital like this. It's a bonding orbital. But if you just flip the orientation of this p orbital, that is, this side if it becomes minus and this side if it is become plus, and if you then combine, you say that that is an antibonding orbital that is produced. So this is the situation of the antibonding orbital. So this is antibonding. Okay. And how do you just feed your electrons according to this above principle? You say that since I have these two pi electrons here, one is contributed by this atom, as another is contributed by this atom. So we have two pi electrons. So ground state situation, normal situation means it is this. So bonding pi orbital, bonding pi molecular orbital, this is actually field orbital. And antibonding pi molecular orbital, you denote it by this pi star. This is basically your vacant orbital. So this is the normal situation. But if this molecule absorbs light, then light absorption means that you say that the way you have learned that these electrons are excited from the highest occupied orbital to the lowest unoccupied orbital. So when a molecule contains this kind of geometry or this structural motif, then actually your highest occupied orbitals are basically bonding pi orbitals. This is your highest occupied orbital, and lowest unoccupied orbital is actually your antibonding orbital. Okay. But if you shine light, then what happens? If you shine light, then one of the electrons from this highest occupied orbital here is actually excited to an antibonding orbital. So it means that this electron which was here, it is basically, once you shine light here, if you shine light, then in presence of this light, what happens? That this electron is excited and you produce this kind of situation. Okay. So this is the excited state situation that I was trying to tell you also the other day. So once this excited state is produced, then you can see that one electron has remained in the bonding orbital, another electron is in this antibonding orbital. So overall bond order is 0. Overall pi bond order is 0. Okay. So overall pi bond order 0 means that it is this kind of situation. That is overall pi bond order. Once you say that overall pi bond order is 0, so it means that you will say that, well, there is no pi bond here. So one electron is here, another electron is just sitting here, something like this. So it means these are actually free electrons. They are no longer bonding electron. This is the situation as long as the molecule is in the excited state. So excited state, there is no pi bond. There is basically one sigma bond that is only present. Now, if you have a neighboring molecule, like neighboring molecule that is present here, which is consists as a pi system, then it has two possibilities. Once the molecule comes down, when it is ground state, like is when the molecule comes down here, then again it is the bonding situation that is produced, ground state. Or as long the molecule is in the excited state, what it can do, if in the neighbor there is a different molecule, then what can happen that this electron here, p orbital electron, and one, it is now the molecule is energized because it has absorbed light. And another molecule in its neighbor that contains actually pi orbital. So what can happen that basically it consists of these two p orbital like here, two p orbital, again it is a plus minus, plus minus. So what can happen that this pi electron and this p electron, it can form a bond. So now instead of this pi bond, it can produce these two sigma bonds like here, and this kind of compound can be produced. Okay. So this is how this basics of the the photochemical reaction. So this is called this 2 plus 2 addition. 2 plus 2 in the sense that 2 pi electrons of a molecule A and these 2 pi electrons of this molecule B, they combine and produce a cyclic compound. Okay. Now, when there is a cyclic compound like this, then you can see that many different kind of diastereoisomers, which is called in this chemical literature, it can be produced. So it means depending upon the orientation of the second molecule, that is molecule B, if the R is on the top side, then what you can happen that this R could be present here. But if this kind of combination can take place where this R is in the downside, that is if the orientation, then actually you generate to this molecule. So what is called this head-to-head combination or this head-to-tail combination. Now, the story is not only here because you can imagine that these molecules are actually not the planar molecule. These are actually non-planar molecule. Non-planar molecule means this side of the molecule, it is not actually in the same plane. So what can happen that this, although you have this R molecule, this R group and this carbonyl group in the same side, but again this other situation can also happen. So this region, if it comes out of plane, then R could be again out of plane on the same side, that is on the board of my screen, or in other way, this part could be this above and this R can go below. So those are again these other isomers. Okay, so that is called this basically mostly this your endo-exo type of isomers. So many different kind of isomeric structure or molecules can be produced because of this 2 plus 2 cycloaddition reaction. Now, what is the final product? That of course depend that to what extent your the interactions are. You can see here that the second example that has been given here, that is below, it is again it's a cycloaddition reaction. So in this case, what you have taken, it's basically it's a cyclobutene molecule, and at this position you have a nitrile group, and again it can combine with this group. But if both the groups, if suppose if this head to tail type of situation and head to head type of situation, if the head to head, it means that then what will happen? That this cyano group will go on the top compared to this, and this methyl group is going down. But in the other way, that is if the cyano group is down, then this methyl group and this cyano group, there could be some kind of your steric interactions. So that possibility becomes smaller. So that's why you can see that this 80% yield that you can obtain see here, it is because of this head-to-head type of combinations. So the final product, how much should be the yield? The chemist use this kind of reactions to basically control the desired product. And for that, actually, you can make the substitution at the appropriate positions and you can control the yield of the chemical reactions. But as far as these biological applications of these things, it is the very similar situation that is here. You come to this now, this thymine derivative. If you see that it's a similar kind of structures in thymine, you have a carbon-carbon double bond here and again carbon-carbon double bond here. And what happens in the DNA bases? That is sort of this nucleic acid. So this is the situation that has been shown again in terms of this cartoon diagram. You see that this nucleic acid means that these are the basically base molecules on the nucleic acids. And this is of course that you have this backbone. Now it so happens that these two thymine residues are side by side, that is TT structure nearby. And then you shine light. Then what happens that these two thymine molecules can undergo this kind of this photodimerization reaction. Okay, and this 2 plus 2 type of photodimerization reaction, and this product is again it is the following. So depending upon this position of your this methyl substitution here, so if the methyl substitution at the same position that is in the same side, then you can get this kind of structure that where this methyl group are on the same side. But since this overall molecule is actually non-planar, so all the different diastereoisomers that you can generate are the following that has been shown here. So basically this is actually your 4-membered cyclic ring, the butane ring that is produced, cyclobutane ring, and this methyl group the positions of these methyl groups are like this, and the positions of the rings are like this. So you see that this cyclobutane, if it is a ring, and if you see that this part is the plane, then what can happen is this in one end, this another 6-membered ring, it is going down, and this side it is going up. This is one situation. So going up and going down. So these two cases, positions of this methyl group, now you can have another isomeric structures. And if it so happens that with respect to the cyclobutane ring, both this other 6-membered ring in the same site, that is what is called this cis, then what can happen that this again, this positions of this methyl group, you can have this kind of structure, isomeric structure like here, or it can happen like this. So all these different possible isomeric structures of these nucleic acids have been isolated in the laboratory after exposures of this nucleic acid to this ultraviolet light. And this is the most pronounced chemical reaction that happens in the nucleic acids, particularly in the DNA molecules. That is when the DNA molecules are exposed to light. Okay. So now I repeat once again that although you have the 4 different kind of bases, but the experience has, it has been observed that this thymine base is actually the most photochemically active. It is not that this adenine, guanine, they do not undergo any kind of chemical reactions in presence of light. There are different kind of reactions, but these reactions are the most frequent reaction that has been observed. Okay. Anything you want to ask up to this stage?
Sir, can you explain how you identify how it is head or it is tail type reaction in some previous slide? Uh,
Okay, like here, like this one.
Yes, sir. Head to head and head to tail interaction.
Okay, actually, see that nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy. This another versions of this spectroscopy. Was it covered in the last semester? NMR? See, you took.
Yes, sir. NMR was taught last semester.
Yes, sir.
NMR was taught, right? Okay.
Yes.
So this NMR is actually the most powerful spectroscopic methods that can allow you to distinguish the different kind of these isomeric structures, because you know that this in NMR that this the carbon the depending upon your, like suppose that if I draw a structure something like this, suppose it's a carbon and there's another carbon atom here, and one hydrogen atom is here and another hydrogen atom is here. This is one situation, and another is this. Suppose it is a carbon-carbon bond. Let us draw it. Put this a double bond here. Hydrogen atom is here, and another hydrogen atom is here. Now you know that this nuclear spin of this hydrogen atom and this nuclear spin of this hydrogen atom, they can interact. So what you generate at the end is this, because of this nuclear spin-spin interaction, multiple splitting, right? The NMR, the transitions undergo splitting, and how many splitting is there? That is foreign. That is depending upon this. So how many neighbors are present? So that rule also that you have studied. Now you know that the origin of these splittings is different type. One is called this through bond interaction. Okay, through bond interaction means that the interaction between the nuclear base of this hydrogen atom and nuclear base of this hydrogen atom can be influenced by the surrounding electron density, and that can be propagated through this bond. And another part is that purely dipole-dipole type of interactions, because nuclear spin, you can think about it's a basic dipole, and through space they can interact definitely, because two magnetic dipoles can interact. But if it is a anti-type of a structure, then their spatial separation is larger, so extent of splitting will be smaller. So depending upon the pattern of the splitting and the how much is this the energy spacing that occurs because of this splitting, you can very easily distinguish between this head-head and head type of isomeric structure. Now, in the biological systems, the difficulties are that this NMR in many cases are very difficult to apply, The reason is that there are some limitations, of course, with this NMR spectroscopy. It needs a larger amount of sample, but in the biology, the protein concentrations in many cases is very small. So it is not only that this NMR spectroscopy, there are other methods like mass spectrometric methods also, and mobility-based methods. Mobility-based method means you again has done a kind of experiment in the first semester possibly, that you have done this chromatographic experiment. So imagine a molecule with this kind of structure and this kind of structure, and you allow these two molecules to travel through a weakly interacting medium. Then what happens that this extent of interactions of this molecule and this molecule with the medium will be different, and they can undergo separation. And once you make these separations, then you can use different spectroscopic methods to distinguish between their isomeric structures. So whatever it is, that these available methods to distinguish this isomeric structure is either spectroscopy or mass spectrometry. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Sir, I am saying why it is called head to head. So I am saying that, or head to tail.
Oh, head to head. Actually, I think this head is a basically common term that has been used in the this chemical language. Head in the sense that just to distinguish between, because once you have a coin, then one is to say this, another is the head, another is the tail. So basically, two groups you have here, because you see that if I do not have this R group, then it is indistinguishable. That is, if you take a simple ethylene molecule here, C double bond C, there is no substitution, then actually there is no orientational difference with respect to this. But the head, if you say that this is one group and this is R group, both the groups are the same side, then you say that this is basically head to head. But when this R is away from this other part of the molecule, then you say that this is basically head to tail. So this is if you say head, and this part is called this tail. So that's why. Because this substitution is actually your head for this molecule. For this molecule, you say that this R is my head. For this molecule, you say that, well, this part of the substitution with respect to this double bond is my head. So that's why these two substitutions are in the same side. So head to head. Two substitutions are in the opposite side. So we call this head to tail. The same thing is also here. Like if you look at these things, we say that this is my main substitution. So this is on my head. This is another substitution. This is my head. So when this is in the same side, this is why I say that for this molecule, it's a basically head-head combination, like similar to this. But if the cyano group is here to the other side, then we'll say that it is a head-to-tail combination. We'll have to just make a reference that with respect to what I am talking head. You could have said that, well, why not? That I could tell with respect to methyl, that is my head, to distinguish my double bond. Yes, of course you can say that. But then actually you'll have to define it clearly, that which one is your head, which side, and which side is your tail. In the case of the coins, that we have make this reference, that which side is head and which side is tail. But it could have been the other way. Okay. And any other question that you have here up to this?
So you said that you will send the notes of that photo selection.
Yeah, somehow that I could not do that. Okay, could you get a chance to look at the Atkins book? That how much is there? What I discussed other day. Well, if not, just please bear with me. I will send you. I will send you in a day or two.
Okay, sir.
If not, then just give me reminder again. Okay, now cyclobutane. This is one of the possible structures, geometric structures that is produced, but it is not all the time that reaction happens like this way. Because you see that this look at this cartoon diagram, that how the molecules are oriented because of this relative orientation. Relative orientation, it depends that with respect to one molecule, which part of the double bond of the other molecule it's neighbor to it. Now, if you look at this molecule here, the other possible reaction is, let me just clean this part actually. The other possible reaction for this molecule is the following, that since it is a basically the reaction between this the double bond, like this double bond part is interacting with this. So why not that this part of the molecule will interact with this part, with this carbonyl group? Is that not possible? Yes, certainly it's a possibility. Because then what will happen that instead of the cyclobutane ring, you will get a cyclic reaction of a compound, but with this called this oxytane ring. Because if this part becomes combines with these things, when basically the four-member ring that will produce, it is called an oxygen becomes a part of this molecule, right? And since your thymine, it definitely it has this carbonyl group. Now, same kind of reaction also can occur, and exactly this is what that has been observed. But of course, the propensity of the reactions are smaller. Depend now. Look at here that this part of the thymine molecule, it has been shown little bit shifted compared to this. So this double bond can combine with these things, and you can get this molecule. Okay, so this is called oxytone ring. Formation of this photoisomerization of this thymine photoproduct, it has been observed, but this oxytone ring, it is basically it is very unstable. So what happens that after formation, this it is mostly as an intermediate. This immediately it undergoes the photoisomerization reaction, and eventually the final product that is produced is here like this. This is the photoproduct that has been observed. So two type of dimerization you see here. That's in this case of dimerization, what you are observing here, that it's a cyclobutane ring that has been produced. But another form of this dimerization reaction, you see that this part is remains more or less intact. Only here that you have a double bond, but instead of double bond, you have this OH group that has been incorporated. But here, basically, that you can see, it's an instead of this double bond, it's this molecule. So it means this has been produced by the isomerization of this. Isomerization means that is basically if you break this bond, then this oxygen becomes free. It can abstract an hydrogen atom and produce this ring. And then you have this part here, that is another this free carbon atom here. So if you just make a homolytic cleavage, that is one radical is here, another radical is here. Then this radical, what can happen that it can form, this is a pi electron basically. It can form a pi bond here that has been produced, another pi bond that has been produced here. And this molecule again, after absorbing this ultraviolet light, it can undergo further photoisomerization reaction. So dual valence isomer, this kind of chemical structure is also been observed. So this chemical structure means that this nitrogen atom has formed a weak bond here with this tail part. So all these compounds, like both these and this, both these molecules have been isolated from these nucleic acids. That is, when the nucleic acids are exposed to light, then the reaction that happens at this thymine part, so the chemical changes that happens is like this. Okay. Now, what I would like to tell you that these changes are not that these are the permanent change, because in every biological system there are the repair mechanisms. So these repair mechanisms, when those are active, then the small reactions that happens in the daytime, at the night times, this repair mechanism can become effective, and all these changes can be repaired. But of course, if the exposure is prolonged exposure, then it can have a permanent effect, and what is called usually in your biological language, this mutagenesis reactions. Now, one important thing I would like to tell you that for any kind of this damage that is happening, the origin is that light absorption and productions of these radicals. Okay, so it means that if we have in our system, basically that we have when you talk about this repair mechanism, that there's many kind of chemicals that is present that which can quickly interact or bind with these radicals. Like suppose that initially, if a radical is produced here, diradical something like this and this, and if I have this additional molecular system that can capture these radicals, then this chemical reaction, of course, can be avoided. Okay, so so the origin light induced changes, the origin is this radical, and this radical capture can make this kind of repair. So that's why these anti-radicals and those kind of molecular systems, it has become quite popular in our day-to-day languages. There are of course this other kind of chemical reaction that also can happen, that the cytosine hydrate reaction, that is one that you can see here. So hydrate reaction is origin is again the same. That is, after this ultraviolet light absorption, you basically produce this diradical here. And once you have this radical, then what can happen, that it can interact with this water molecule. It can split the water molecule. And this hydrogen one part is going there, another OH part is going here. So basically you produce this, your cytosine hydrate. And this cytosine hydrate, of course, that it can undergo this further kind of these isomeric changes and give rise to through these deamination reactions, what is called this your uracil hydrate. So many kind of photo products, those have been identified, but the origin of all kind of chemical reactions is actually the origin of this radical formation. Now there is also a study that to what extent that different kind of final products that you can see here, that you see that one example that I gave you here is this Dewar valence type of isomer, and a 6,4 kind of this photo product. 6,4 means it's all depends on this nomenclature. If you say that this is number 1, this is your number 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, so this is 5 and 6. So 5-6 dimerization, this is common. And so this is called this your 4-6 product. When you talk about then which positions of the ring is combining of one molecule combining with this another molecule, that's how just you define that what is the final product. Now what is the typical distribution of this product, that study has also been carried out. So this is the general behavior that you can see here, that is cyclobutane, that formation starting from this to this thymine molecule, that is this maximum amount, and this Dewar type of a structure that I just showed you, that is abundance is like this is smaller. But if you have this thymine and cytosine type of residue, then you have the distribution is something like this. And but of course, is only pure cytosine, then the propensity of the chemical reactions are also smaller. And these are the typical distributions. Now, in addition to that, there are other type of chemical reactions can also occur. And these chemical reactions that I have summarized here. Now you see that these chemical reactions after light absorptions, it is because of these ionizations. Now the ionizations, if you do these molecules, any kind of molecular ionizations in the gas phase, which you have learned in the chemistry literature, again called this ionization potential, when the molecules are isolated by this atomic or molecular system, whatever it is, the ionization potential is quite large. That is, you need a large amount of energy, and which typically can happen that when the molecule absorbs the light in the deeper ultraviolet region of the spectrum. But when the molecules are in the solvated condition or this natural environment, then this ionization potential of different chemical groups dramatically decreases. That, of course, you already know these things from your common high school level. Suppose there is a behavior of the, in physics and chemistry both you learned, that is, if you take a sodium atom, then if you try to knock out this electron that is present in your outermost shell of the sodium atom, that it needs a quite significant amount of energy. But if you take a sodium metal, that is alkali metal, then if you shine light here, and then any kind of this ultraviolet light can emit the electron from the surface. So what is called this actually in your physics literature, you have talked about it, is called this work function. So work function of a sodium metal, that is a photoelectric effect when you studied, very easily electron can be knocked out. But again, instead of taking a sodium piece, a metal, if you take a sodium atom, isolated sodium atom, then if you shine the same amount of the same frequency of this light, no electron emission can occur. So it means that this ionization energy, it depends on this degree of aggregation of your molecule. So starting from the sodium atom, when you go to the sodium metal, depending upon the degree of aggregation, you can produce a small clusters of the sodium atom. You can produce a small nano cluster of the sodium atom. And depending upon the size of the nano cluster, the ionization energy gradually changes, and that is actually the whole field of this nanoscience. That is depending upon degree of aggregation, how this the general electronic properties and magnetic properties changes. But the same thing is also in the biological environment. If you take an isolated DNA base and if you put that in a biological environment, then this ionization energies are different. So the typical ultraviolet light that is available in the solar B region of the spectrum, that light it can cause also the ionization of your molecule. Okay, so that is what has been shown here. That is, this is a basic molecule here. After ionization, you basically produce here this one cationic radical. The cation, this red, you see here, there's a positive charge is shown here along with a radical here. Okay, because all the bonds that you have in your molecule, these are the closed shell molecule. One electron is knocked out, means that what is left here is actually a cation radical. Cation in the sense that one electron has left, so it is positively charged, and a single electron is lying here. So now it is actually highly reactive molecules. Now it is a radical. So depending upon that, what are the different kind of radical scavengers that are present in your system, either these photochemical reactions can be stopped. Otherwise, this kind of these ions, radical cations, it can undergo a series of reactions. So one of the series of reactions, it is called this your oxidation reactions. So what are the oxidation reaction? That once a radical is present, you know that if you take an oxygen molecule, the oxygen molecule, the way you have learned again in the basic chemistry class, that it is a basically bi-radical type of molecule. So what is a bi-radical type of molecule? And in this molecule, you have one radical. So one radical here and one of this radical of this oxygen and atom of this oxygen molecule, it can easily form a chemical bond. Okay. So this chemical bonding that has been shown here, it is called your peroxy radical that is produced. So this peroxy radical, suppose that one example that has been shown here, this 70% and 30% probability of this chemical reaction. Look at here that there is a methyl group here. So once you produce a diradical of this molecule, suppose the radical is present somewhere here and this electron loss. So suppose this molecule here with a cation radical, and if since this is a cation means extra positive charge. So positive charge can be neutralized by two different means chemically. One is that it can absorb or collect an electron, or it can just release one hydrogen ion. Hydrogen atom means this proton release. So proton release is actually very common chemical process in the condensed phase. So if they releases this proton, then you can generate this diradical at this position. You originally had this methyl group, and this diradical now it can combine with this one of this radical of this oxygen molecule and produce what is called this peroxy radical. And once this peroxy radicals produced here, then either the chemical reactions can be stopped at this stage, that is, it can absorb another hydrogen radical, which is quite abundant in any kind of biological environment, is produced this kind of structure. Remember that this is not a carboxylic acid, but this is actually a peroxy chemical bond, that is CH2 oxygen bond and then hydrogen. So it's a basically peroxide molecule, hydrogen peroxide type of molecule. So one side you have this hydrogen peroxide and another side you have a substitution group. That is group that has been shown here. It can undergo multiple type of this isomerization reactions and produce this kind of this end product. Okay. So the origin of any of these things is that your production of this cation radical followed by combinations with this oxygen molecule and produce this oxidation, or this other possibility is that you see that has been happened here, that these double bonds are present. Then basically this water molecule that reacts here, and after this water reactions, one of this OH group that has been bound. And so I think just you can imagine here that one radical that you produced, then one water oxygen molecule, then this basically this part has been bound. Radical is again, now it is located at this position. Methyl group has remained intact. Now this oxygen molecule can combine and again produce this kind of similar, this peroxy radical and this peroxy radical, sorry, this peroxy radical here, peroxy radical, this is kind of this peroxide, and this peroxide can undergo all different kind of reactions. So what we talked about, it is this antioxidant. Say antioxidant means that those are the molecules that which can very easily combine with this initial radical that is produced, and this stop this subsequent reaction, that is combination with this oxygen molecule and production of these many different kind of final products. Okay. This is one of this example. Now, in the biological environment, this OH radical, and of course this peroxy radical. The peroxy radicals are common here. So this hydrogen peroxy radical is something like this. These are also these very common species, and so this is called this usually this. This is reactive oxygenated species, okay, or reactive oxygenated species, this ROS, this is very common, and the whole purpose of these antioxidant molecules which are consumed is to control or this minimize as much as possible this kind of chemical reactions. Okay, I think this is all that I wanted to tell you, that what is this origin of these photochemical reactions. Now, it is not only that this thymine molecule that is the most only reactive species. Using this adenine guanine photochemical reactions are also been studied, but as I just told you that these those are photochemically less reactive molecules. Okay, if you shine light on your the side chains of proteins, after prolonged exposure, some kind of photochemical reaction also can happen. So summarily, that all kind of these biological species are basically reactive to ultraviolet light, and this origin of these reactions is that after light absorptions, basically it is produced the radical, and those radicals they further react with each other and produce this final product. Okay. So this is the summary of the message that I wanted to give. Is it okay? Or if you have any question up to this?
So can you PDF and the previous days one also?
This PDF actually right now I am just mailing to you, and the previous days, other days that I will have to work a little bit because I would need to add something there.
Okay, sir.
And for this literature, the basic of these things, this kind of chemical reactions, they are available in the chemistry literature. But these examples that I just showed you, that I will email to you to just articles. But these articles, I do not want that you read these articles in details of these things, because those are basically from these professional journals. And so many things are there which definitely you do not need. But what I wanted to tell you is actually the basics of those things. But still, I will mail you those articles that from where that I took these materials to tell you. Okay, and if you get time, just you can have a look at these things if you are just curious. Okay, so having said these things, I am stopping here, and I will mail you this right now, this slide, and by this evening or tomorrow, I will mail you this other part. Okay. And so,
Sir, why does DNA bases are more chemically sensitive compared to aromatic side chains of proteins?
well, as I just told you, that this the common experience is that this 2+2 cycloaddition reaction that has been shown here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So it means that only this DNA bases. You see that these reactions people have been studying over many almost 100 years, and so normal observation is that if you have a carbon-carbon type of double bond and which is linked with this kind of groups, like this kind of groups, and also this another carbon-carbon double bond where you have kind of these substitutions, then they are very much chemically active. Chemically active in the sense that after absorption of this light, they produce this radical, Now see that these radicals are the isolated radical. Now, if you take an aromatic molecule, suppose a tryptophan, okay, that where you have this indole molecule. Indole means that basically you have imagine this situation that you have an aromatic molecule and this side. So overall, basically this is your indole base. Now, even if you generate a radical here, this radical is not localized radical because it can be delocalized very easily over this whole molecules because there are many chemical bonds are there. Unlike that, if you have this kind of chemical structure, these radicals are isolated, this localized radical. So once it is delocalized, then what happens that these reactivities are, it gets additional stabilization, which you learned in the chemistry class. Okay, so they becomes less reactive. But in this case, because of these localizations, it becomes very reactive when you have this kind of chemical environment.
In histidine, that localization, the delocalization is less.
Delocalization is less. So if you look at again this structure here, basically it's the similar kind of situation here. This carbon-carbon double bond, and there it is all saturated ring. This is all saturated ring, and of course you have a carbon-carbon group here. Normally, same structural motif that is typically photochemically reactive. So because of this localization, what happens that this it very easily it reacts chemically. So this is also another experience that this thymine type of base. This is actually the most. I'm repeating these things again and again. That the probability of the reaction, or very easily these molecules react. Okay, and so some of these. Okay, so some of these materials. Let me just mail it to you. I think that you will not have much difficulties to read. You can just read these papers, at least first few pages, then you will get some idea. And although I have not discussed, but the paper that I'm going to send to you, that you will see that these adenine bases also react chemically, but there's a much more complex chemical reactions. And in the research laboratory, people have identified that what type kind of the reactions that occurs, but you do not need to know the details of these things, at least at this stage. It's only more for the professionals. Okay. Any other thing that you want to ask? Any other question? Okay, you read these things, and then if you have question, then definitely then we can discuss. Okay, so I'm just stopping here the sharing, and let me see that this how many of you are present. Okay. Okay, so I'm just I'm leaving here at this stage. Okay.